The breaking point. Director Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the vast assembly chamber, her human form dwarfed by the towering alien architecture around her. The chamber could hold 10,000 beings from across the galaxy, but today only the most powerful representatives were present. Their eyes, sensors, and various alien sensory organs were all focused on her with an intensity that would have crushed a weaker person. Sarah had spent 15 years working her way up through the diplomatic ranks, learning the complex languages and customs of dozens of alien species. She had believed in the Galactic Assembly's mission of peace and cooperation. Today, that belief was being tested like never before. Admiral Thexkar rose from his elevated platform, his massive reptilian form casting a shadow across the chamber floor. His scales were a deep emerald green, and his yellow eyes glowed with barely contained anger. As the current assembly chairman, he commanded respect from every species in known space. Every species except one. Human representative, Thexkar's voice boomed through the chamber's translation systems. You have kept this assembly waiting for 3 standard months. Your world was given a simple choice. Submit your quantum research data to assembly oversight, or face the consequences of your defiance. Sarah remained perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back in a posture she had learned during her military service years ago. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The decision she was about to announce would change everything for humanity, and possibly for the entire galaxy. Admiral Thexkar, Sarah replied, her voice carrying clearly despite the chamber's enormous size. Earth has carefully considered the Assembly's request. Our answer is no. The silence that followed was absolute. In 15 years of Assembly politics, Sarah had never heard the chamber so quiet. Even the usual background hum of translation devices and life support systems seemed to pause. Ambassador Zilthera, an insectoid diplomat from the Kepler system, was the first to break the silence. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as she leaned forward on her speaking platform. Director Chen, surely you understand the implications of this refusal. The Assembly has maintained galactic peace for over 2,000 years. This peace depends on technological parity among member worlds. Sarah turned to face the insectoid ambassador. Zilthera had always been one of the more reasonable voices in the Assembly, often serving as a mediator between the more aggressive species and the smaller worlds. Ambassador Zilthera, with respect, the Assembly's version of peace has always meant control. You demand that Earth surrender our scientific achievements while offering nothing in return except the promise that you will not attack us. The Assembly protects all member worlds, growled Counselor Braktok, a bear-like creature from the Outer Rim. Your world's population is barely 8 billion. The Assembly represents over 3 trillion beings across 10,000 worlds. You cannot stand alone. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she felt truly confident. Counselor Braktok, you assume that standing alone means standing weak. Earth has never made that assumption. She activated a small device on her wrist, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. The displays showed star charts, technical specifications, and sensor readings that made several alien representatives gasp in surprise. For the past 5 years, Sarah continued, while the Assembly has been demanding access to our quantum research, Earth's scientists have achieved something that your combined civilizations have not accomplished in millennia. We have successfully created stable quantum tunnels through spacetime itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent her entire career working on theoretical quantum mechanics. 3 years ago, her team had achieved the impossible. They had found a way to fold space, allowing instantaneous travel across vast distances. More importantly, they had found a way to make entire fleets invisible to conventional sensors while still maintaining full combat effectiveness. Admiral Thexkar's eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic displays. These readings are fabricated. No species has achieved stable quantum tunneling. The energy requirements alone would drain an entire star system. That would be true, Sarah replied, if we were using conventional energy sources. But Earth's fusion technology is apparently more advanced than the assembly realized. We can power quantum tunnels using the same energy that lights our cities. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species began shouting questions and demands in their native languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the volume of simultaneous conversations. Sarah waited for the noise to die down before continuing. The Assembly has always treated Earth as a junior partner, despite our contributions to galactic science and commerce. You have demanded our research while sharing none of your own. You have imposed trade restrictions that benefit the older, more established worlds at our expense. Most importantly, you have threatened us with military action if we do not comply with your demands. The Assembly's military exists to maintain order, Thexkar replied, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. Perhaps a demonstration of that military power would help Earth reconsider its position. Sarah's smile widened. Admiral, I was hoping you would say that. She pressed another control on her wrist device. Throughout the assembly chamber, view screens activated, showing the space surrounding the Assembly's home world of Nexus Prime. The screens displayed the normal traffic of diplomatic vessels, cargo ships, and patrol craft that always surrounded the galactic capital. Then, without warning, the space around Nexus Prime filled with ships. 200 human vessels materialized out of nowhere, appearing in perfect formation around the assembly fleet. The human ships were sleek and silver, shaped like arrows pointing toward the heart of the galaxy. Each one was smaller than the massive assembly dreadnoughts, but there were so many of them that they blocked out the stars. How did they get there? Whispered Ambassador Zylthera. Our sensors detected nothing. No ships approached Nexus Prime. Captain Marcus Webb's voice came through the chamber's communication systems, transmitted from his flagship, the UES Defiance. Assembly vessels, this is Captain Webb of the United Earth Fleet. Our ships have been in position around your world for the past 6 hours. Your sensors could not detect us because we do not exist in normal spacetime when our quantum drives are active. Thexkar's claws extended as he gripped his speaking platform. Human vessels, you are in violation of assembly space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Admiral, Captain Webb replied calmly. Our fleet includes 200 quantum-capable vessels, each equipped with weapons that can strike targets in normal space while remaining invisible to retaliation. Your orbital defense platforms and fleet are impressive, but they cannot hit targets they cannot see. To demonstrate his point, Captain Webb ordered a single warning shot. A beam of pure energy struck one of the Assembly's patrol ships, not to destroy it, but to disable its engines. The patrol ship's lights went out, and it began drifting helplessly in space. The weapon that just disabled your patrol ship was fired from a vessel that your sensors still cannot detect. Webb continued. This is not a threat, Admiral. This is a demonstration of why Earth no longer needs the Assembly's protection. Sarah watched the faces of the alien representatives around her. Fear, anger, and amazement warred for control of their expressions. For 2,000 years, the Assembly had maintained its authority through superior technology and overwhelming numbers. In a single moment, Earth had demonstrated that both advantages were gone. Earth hereby formally withdraws from the Galactic Assembly. Sarah announced, "We will honor our existing trade agreements with individual worlds, but we will no longer recognize Assembly authority over human affairs. We will no longer pay Assembly taxes or follow Assembly regulations. Most importantly, we will no longer surrender our technological achievements to an organization that has given us nothing but demands and threats in return." She turned to face Admiral Thexkar directly. "Admiral, your fleet is welcome to try to force Earth back into compliance. But before you give that order, I suggest you consider whether the Assembly can afford to lose its entire military in a single engagement." The chamber fell silent again as the implications of Sarah's words sank in. The human fleet surrounding Nexus Prime represented technology that could revolutionize galactic warfare. Ships that could appear and disappear at will, weapons that could strike without retaliation, and the ability to project force across interstellar distances instantly. Ambassador Zelthera was the first to speak. Director Chen, what you are proposing will destabilize the entire galaxy. The assembly provides structure, order, and protection to thousands of worlds. Without it, there will be chaos. Sarah nodded respectfully to the insectoid diplomat. Ambassador, the assembly has provided order, but it has also provided oppression. How many worlds pay tribute to the assembly against their will? How many species have been forced to limit their technological development to maintain the status quo? How many civilizations have been held back from their full potential because the assembly fears change? She gestured toward the view screens, still showing the human fleet. Earth is not trying to conquer the galaxy or replace the assembly's authority with our own. We simply want the freedom to develop our own technology, make our own choices, and determine our own destiny. We believe that every world deserves that same freedom. Thexkar's voice was filled with cold fury. Your world has made its choice, humans. The assembly will not forget this insult. When your quantum technology fails, when your ships break down, when your enemies surround you, do not expect the assembly to come to your aid. Sarah bowed formally to the assembly chairman. Admiral Thexkar, Earth has never expected the assembly to come to our aid. We have learned to rely on ourselves, and that has made us strong. We wish the assembly well, but we will face the future on our own terms. She turned and walked toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her, the alien representatives began talking among themselves in urgent whispers. Some were angry, others were frightened, but a few looked thoughtful, as if they were considering possibilities they had never imagined before. As Sarah reached the chamber's massive doors, she activated her communication device one final time. Captain Webb, please bring the fleet home. Earth has said everything it needs to say. In the space around Nexus Prime, 200 human ships vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving the assembly fleet alone among the stars. The age of human subservience was over, and the galaxy would never be the same. Chaos unleashed. 3 weeks after Earth's dramatic withdrawal from the Galactic Assembly, the ripple effects were being felt across every inhabited system in the galaxy. On the mining world of Kepler 442 bits, Administrator Jorik stood before his planet's governing council, holding a data pad that contained the most important message his world had ever received. Jorik was a Caltharian, a humanoid species with blue-tinted skin and large, expressive eyes. His people had been members of the Assembly for over 800 years, paying heavy taxes and following strict regulations that limited their industrial development. The Assembly claimed these restrictions were necessary to prevent environmental damage, but everyone knew the real reason. The Assembly's core worlds needed Kepler 442 bits to remain a source of raw materials, not a competitor in manufacturing. The message came through secure channels this morning. Jorik announced to the Council, Earth is offering us a formal alliance. They want to share their quantum tunnel technology in exchange for mining rights and mutual defense agreements. Council Elder Vexna leaned forward in her chair, her ancient eyes reflecting decades of frustration with Assembly rule. What are the terms of this alliance? No tribute payments, no technology restrictions, and no Assembly oversight. Jorik replied, Earth wants to establish a network of independent worlds that can trade freely and defend themselves without Assembly interference. The council chamber erupted in excited conversation. For generations, the Caltharians had dreamed of industrial independence. Their world was rich in rare metals essential for advanced electronics, but Assembly regulations forced them to export raw materials instead of building their own technology sector. This is exactly what the Assembly feared would happen, said Councillor Rakdo, a younger Caltharian who had spent time studying on Assembly core worlds. Earth's defiance is inspiring other worlds to question Assembly authority. Elder Vexna stood up, her decision already clear in her mind. Send our response to Earth immediately. Kepler 442 bits accepts their alliance proposal. It is time our people control their own destiny. Similar scenes were playing out across dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Collective, a group of nomadic space dwellers who had been forced to register their movements with assembly authorities, declared their independence and began openly ignoring assembly travel restrictions. The crystal farmers of Andromeda 7 stopped sending their energy-rich crystals to assembly redistribution centers and started selling directly to the highest bidders. Most significantly, the Thorian Republic, a powerful multi-system government that had been an assembly member for over a millennium, announced that it was reviewing its relationship with the Galactic organization. The Thorians controlled some of the most important trade routes in the galaxy, and their potential withdrawal sent shockwaves through assembly economic planning councils. Admiral Thexkar stood in the assembly's war room, surrounded by tactical displays showing the growing crisis. Red indicators marked worlds that had either declared independence or were openly defying assembly regulations. Yellow indicators showed worlds that had stopped paying their full tribute amounts or were delaying compliance with assembly directives. "The situation is becoming critical," reported General Korith, Thexkar's chief military advisor. "We estimate that over 300 worlds are now in various stages of rebellion. If this continues, the Assembly's authority will collapse within a year." Thexkar's claws clicked against the metal surface of the tactical table as he studied the displays. "What is our military response capability?" "Limited," Korith admitted. "Our forces are designed to maintain order against individual troublemaker worlds, not to suppress galaxy-wide rebellion. More importantly, every military action we take seems to inspire more worlds to join the rebellion." The Admiral's yellow eyes glowed with frustrated anger. "The humans have done this deliberately. They knew their defiance would cause chaos." "Perhaps," said a new voice from the chamber's entrance, "but they also knew that chaos was preferable to the alternative." Ambassador Zilthera entered the war room, her compound eyes reflecting the red warning lights from the tactical displays. As one of the few assembly diplomats still attempting to find peaceful solutions, she had requested this meeting with military leadership. "Ambassador," Thexkar growled, "unless you have a diplomatic solution to this crisis, I do not have time for your theories." Zilthera approached the tactical table and studied the display of rebellious worlds. "Admiral, look at this pattern. The worlds joining the rebellion are not random. They are primarily resource-rich worlds with limited industrial capacity, agricultural worlds whose food exports are controlled by assembly quotas, and frontier worlds whose exploration rights are restricted by assembly regulations." She activated a control, and the display changed to show economic data instead of military positions. "These worlds have been systematically kept dependent on the Assembly's core worlds for manufactured goods, technology, and military protection. Earth's demonstration of independence has shown them that this dependence is not natural or inevitable." General Korith leaned over the display. "What are you suggesting, Ambassador?" "I am suggesting that we are not facing a military rebellion that can be crushed with force," Zilthera replied. "We are facing an economic and political revolution that challenges the fundamental structure of galactic civilization." Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the Assembly headquarters. A communications officer ran into the war room, his face pale with shock. "What is the emergency?" Thexkar demanded. "Admiral, long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet movement in the Outer Rim territories. Over 500 ships from multiple species are converging on the Arcturus system." Thexkar's eyes widened. Arcturus was the location of one of the Assembly's largest military bases, strategically positioned to control access to the galaxy's outer regions. "Are they attacking the base?" General Korith asked. "No, sir," the communications officer replied. "They appear to be meeting there. Intelligence reports suggest it is some kind of conference or gathering." Ambassador Zilthera's mandibles clicked together in what humans would recognize as a thoughtful expression. "Admiral, I believe we are witnessing the formation of a new galactic power structure. Earth is not just declaring independence. They are organizing the rebellious worlds into a unified coalition. The tactical display updated to show new information from the Arcturus system. Ships from dozens of different species were indeed gathering there, but they were not preparing for battle. Instead, they were establishing communication networks and coordinating their movements in patterns that suggested peaceful cooperation rather than military aggression. Then, as if to confirm Zylthera's analysis, a message arrived through official diplomatic channels. It was addressed to the Galactic Assembly from the newly formed Free Worlds Coalition and bore the signature of Director Sarah Chen of Earth. Thexkar read the message aloud to the assembled military leaders. To the Galactic Assembly, the Free Worlds Coalition hereby announces its formation as an alternative to Assembly membership for worlds seeking true independence and self-determination. We offer our former Assembly colleagues peaceful coexistence and mutually beneficial trade relationships. However, we will no longer recognize Assembly authority over coalition affairs, and we will defend our member worlds against any attempt to force them back into Assembly subjugation. The message continued with a list of coalition founding members. 47 worlds had formally joined, with dozens more listed as associate members considering full membership. They have created a rival government, General Korith said, stating the obvious. No, Zylthera corrected. They have created what the Assembly should have been from the beginning. A voluntary association of independent worlds working together for mutual benefit rather than a hierarchical empire that extracts tribute from weaker members. Thexkar turned to face the insectoid ambassador, his anger finally boiling over. Ambassador, your sympathy for these rebels is beginning to sound like treason. Zylthera stood her ground despite the Admiral's intimidating presence. Admiral, my species has been loyal Assembly members for over 1,500 years. But loyalty does not require blindness. The Assembly has grown corrupt and complacent. Perhaps this crisis is an opportunity to reform our institutions rather than simply crushing our opposition. Before Thexkar could respond, another message arrived from the coalition. This one was a personal communication from Captain Marcus Webb, addressed directly to the Assembly's military leadership. Admiral Thexkar, the Free Worlds Coalition does not seek war with the Assembly. However, Coalition intelligence has detected Assembly fleet movements towards several of our member worlds. Please be advised that any military action against Coalition members will be considered an act of war against all Coalition worlds. The message included tactical data that made General Korith's breath catch in his throat. The Coalition fleet had grown far beyond the 200 ships Earth had displayed at Nexus Prime. Over 800 vessels were now equipped with quantum tunnel technology, making them effectively invisible to conventional sensors and immune to traditional military tactics. How is this possible? Korith whispered. Earth could not have built so many quantum-capable ships in just 3 weeks. Ambassador Zylthera studied the tactical data with growing understanding. They did not build them, General. They converted existing ships. Earth has been sharing their quantum tunnel technology with Coalition members, allowing them to upgrade their fleets rapidly. The implications were staggering. The Assembly's military advantage, built up over 2 millennia, had been neutralized in less than a month. Even worse, every day the Coalition existed, more worlds would join, and more ships would be upgraded with quantum technology. Thexkar stood in silence for several minutes, processing the reality of the situation. The galaxy had fundamentally changed, and the Assembly would need to change with it or risk complete irrelevance. What are our options? He finally asked. General Korith looked uncomfortable. Military victory is no longer possible, Admiral. The Coalition's quantum-capable fleet is too large and too advanced for our conventional forces to engage successfully. Then what do you recommend? Ambassador Zylthera stepped forward. Admiral, I recommend negotiation. The Coalition has offered peaceful coexistence. Perhaps it is time to consider restructuring the Assembly into something more like the Coalition, a voluntary association rather than a mandatory empire. Thexkar's laugh was bitter and harsh. You are suggesting that the Assembly surrender its authority voluntarily. I am suggesting that we adapt or become extinct, Zylthera replied. The coalition has demonstrated that centralized galactic government is no longer sustainable. Worlds with advanced technology will not submit to external control indefinitely. Over the following weeks, the galaxy continued to transform. The Free Worlds Coalition grew to include over 200 member worlds, creating a network of independent planets linked by quantum communication systems and defended by an increasingly powerful fleet. The Assembly found itself controlling fewer worlds but facing the same administrative costs. Several core worlds began questioning whether Assembly membership was still beneficial, especially as coalition worlds offered better trade terms and fewer regulatory restrictions. The crisis came to a head when the Thorian Republic formally announced its withdrawal from the Assembly and its intention to join the coalition. The Thorians controlled the most important hyperspace routes in the galaxy, and their defection would effectively cut the remaining Assembly worlds off from each other. Faced with complete economic and political collapse, Admiral Thexkar made the most difficult decision of his career. He contacted Director Sarah Chen directly and requested formal negotiations between the Assembly and the Coalition. The negotiations took place on a neutral world in the galaxy's center. Sarah Chen led the Coalition delegation, while Admiral Thexkar represented the Assembly. After 3 days of intense discussions, they reached an historic agreement. The galaxy would be divided into 2 spheres of influence. The Assembly would continue to govern its remaining core worlds, but it would abandon its tributary system and allow worlds to choose their own government freely. The coalition would establish its own territory in the outer systems, with both governments committed to peaceful coexistence and free trade. Most importantly, both sides agreed to share certain advanced technologies for mutual defense against external threats that might emerge from unexplored regions of the galaxy. As Sarah Chen signed the final agreement, she reflected on how much had changed since that day in the Assembly chamber when she had announced Earth's withdrawal. Humanity had not only achieved independence, but had inspired a galactic revolution that gave hundreds of worlds the freedom to choose their own destinies. The universe had descended into chaos as the old order collapsed and a new one emerged. But from that chaos came something better. A galaxy where strength came from voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission, where technological advancement was shared rather than hoarded, and where even the smallest worlds could stand equal with the greatest powers. Earth had cut its ties with the Galactic Assembly, and in doing so, had set the entire universe free.